to this campus. I said, sure, why not? So that's my little journey and how I got here. Okay, so a little bit about me. I've already explained I'm an adjunct, and I want to read just one paragraph out of the whole book. I'm not going to bore you, I promise. But I love this little paragraph. It's only about the author page, and it kind of describes me. But I think if you're an instructor, you probably can relate to this in some way. So it describes me as follows. It says, by day, Mike Kowis is a mild-mannered tax attorney for a Fortune 500 company in Texas. By night, he swaps a three-piece suit for a pair of tights and a shiny red cape, and then begins his duties as a modern-day superhero, a.k.a. adjunct faculty member at one of the largest community colleges in the Lone Star State. His superpower is engaging college students. See what I did there? Engaging college students in business law and corporate tax classes. He has spent the past 15 years fearlessly fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. Well, not really, but he has spent that time trying to fully engage his students in night classes, which is just as hard. In his debut book, Mike shares the secrets to success in the college classroom. So that's a little bit about me. Anyway, I'm a tax geek by day. I've already explained that. I've written a couple books, and now I speak a little bit. So let's just jump right into it. So this is me at Halloween. I look ridiculous. I'm wearing a 1940s zoot suit or whatever. More about that in a later slide. But for now, I just want to go over my overall teaching philosophy. So it occurred to me years ago that if I'm having fun in the classroom, chances are my students are too. So I always try to keep that in mind. And the opposite is also true. If I'm having a bad day, me and my wife are arguing, probably over something stupid or something the kids did, or maybe the dog messed in the garage. I'm having a lousy day and I'm frustrated. I go in the classroom. If I bring that with me in there, that baggage, my students are going to sense that, and they're going to be uncomfortable. And they're not going to want to be there either, right? So I always, before every class, I think to myself, hey, this is going to be a great class. We're going to go have fun. I'll put all that baggage aside, and I go in there and I concentrate on teaching and having a good time. And for me, it's not hard because I love teaching. It's like my passion. I love doing it. And in particular, what I love is to make my students laugh or smile. I just love that. So I got a 3-hour window one night a week on Tuesday nights to go in there and just tease them. They tease me. We have a lot of fun, a lot of back and forth. So what I would encourage you to do is think about what you find fun. What's your passion in life? What do you want to do? Do you love music? Maybe you can incorporate music in your classroom. Do you know how to play an instrument? Oh man, if I was gifted with the ability to play guitar, I swear I'd be making up like songs about business law. I'd be singing,
rapping.
I'd be rapping about it. Yeah.
I create songs with my students. I teach Spanish and I use music.
Oh,
create
nice.
lyrics.
Okay.
But
awesome.
I don't have many chances. I am active too. So continue.
Okay. No, that's great. That's great. That's exactly what I do. So I like the idea of having fun. That's my overall philosophy. Now for the details. There's 5 roles. It's hard to see with the light, but there's 5 roles of the instructor. And so when I came up with these roles, this is when I was writing the book. All these tips today are in the book and more. And basically, I try to organize my teaching tips, my best practices, if you will, into these 5 roles. And my thought is that every teacher, every instructor plays all of these roles when you go, at least I do, and it seems to be effective for me and my students. So these are the 5 roles that I focus on as an instructor, a college instructor. And so we're going to go through each one of these. So the first is to be an entertainer, and that means you got to grab their attention. And so that's a hard thing for me. I teach business law. Can you imagine a more boring topic than business law? Because half the class is contracts. Contract law. Oh my gosh, that is so dry and boring. So I try to jazz it up and have fun in there. But I teach a night class, so it's doubly hard because these students have had a long day of classes or they've worked and they're coming here for a night and they just fill their belly at Whataburger across the street, and they're full and they just want to take a nap, right? And so it's a huge challenge for me just to keep them awake. And as I say in my book, you can't effectively teach anything to students who are asleep, literally. So I have to keep them awake. That's my number one challenge. So how do I do that? Try to be an entertainer, grab their attention, make it fun and lively. Second, you got to be a coach. I think everybody can relate to that, right? You got to motivate them to come to class and to read. Oh my God, that's the hardest thing, right? Trying to get them to read. That is so difficult. I'm going to give you some tips later on how to do that, how to motivate them to read, come to class. Next is parent, and that's probably the most important role that I see myself as, trying to show that I care. They're not just a number, right? And that I genuinely care about each and every student, and I care about their success in my class, right? And I got to make them feel that and really believe it. Otherwise, they're less likely to stay engaged and stay focused on the class. So that's my number one role out of all these. The next is law professor, and that's just from my background. I went to law school, so every U.S. law school uses the Socratic method. And so I like that method. I think it's effective, but I call it Socratic light, and it's the same method, but it's not as intense. In law school, if you weren't prepared and the teacher called on you, they would kick you out of class. Literally, you go home for the day. I don't recommend doing that. I'm not going to do that. So I call it Socratic light. It's a little bit softer, but it's the same approach. I'm probing my students and I'm asking them questions to see if they understand the material. I give them like a scenario and try to see if they can logically and use critical thinking skills to come up with the right answer. So that's the method. The last is classroom teacher, and that's just how to give effective lectures and classroom management, that sort of thing. So these are the whole big picture, and then the rest of this presentation is me giving individual practical tips on all these. What you're going to notice is there's no pedagogy theory in any of this presentation. I don't have a PhD, I don't have a doctorate in education. This is just me giving my practical tips on what works in my classroom. And so there's not going to be any data, results, research data, that sort of thing. It's just going to be what works in my classroom. And hopefully a few of these tips, maybe not all of them, but hopefully at least a few of these tips will work in your classroom. Okay, so this is an actual quote from one of my student evaluations, the anonymous evaluation. It says, he made a boring course into something that I had and would pay attention to. I only fell asleep once. Okay, so that's a great letter of recommendation right there. How about that? So I just added this slide yesterday. I love this. So Steve Martin wrote a book. I think he's wrote a couple of books, but the one I read, Born Standing Up, he has this quote in there, and it's very hard to read a note, but I think it basically says he always thought he would go into philosophy. He'd get a doctorate in philosophy and become a teacher, as teaching is, after all, a form of show business. And so I love that. That's the whole mindset of this book, is that every time I take the classroom, it's like taking the stage at theatrical performance. You're trying to do the same thing. You're trying to engage the audience, grab their attention, and relay information, communicate a story, right? My story just has to be business law, right? But that's the whole concept, and I love that thinking. Okay, so for the first role, so the role is being an entertainer. In this role, these are some of the practical tips, and we'll go through in more detail in a minute. Tell funny stories and jokes, wear Zany hat or costume, use crazy examples, sing and dance, and then perform skits. So those are all the different roles. Just want to see where I'm on time. Good. We'll go through each one. Now, the first tip, and there's more in the book, but these are my top 5, you should say. Mm-hmm. These are tell jokes and funny stories. So from day one in my class, I'm always kidding around my class. A lot of people do. This is nothing, earth-shattering. Oh my God, really? But no, I just from day one I set the tone. When they come into class, this is business law. Everyone's nervous and they're giddy and they're trying to figure out, what's the instructor like? What's the class? Is it going to be hard, easy? Is the instructor boring? What's it like? So they come in, they're a little bit excited and nervous, and I'll wait till most of them fill in the class, and then I'll write on the board, German 1301, and I'll say, Guten Tag, welcome to German 1301. And then, usually I get a little chuckle or they smile or whatever, but occasionally, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen, somebody will get up and nervously walk out of class. They think, they believe me, right? So that's kind of fun, chasing them down. You've done that before.
Very not German, but
right.
something else. Welcome to, and they're like, huh?
Exactly, right? That's fun. So I do that all the time. Another thing I do, and I just did it this week because I gave a test this week, is on the test day, they come in, they're all nervous, and they just want to hurry up and start the test, right? Because they're crammed in all they could in the hallway 15 minutes before, and they want to just start it so they don't forget it all. And so I'll come in and I'll tell them when they're all ready to go, I'll say, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is there's no test today. The bad news is instead, and by then their eyes are perked up, man, they're all excited, this look of relief is over their face, and then I hit them with the bad news. The bad news is instead, we're going to have a celebration of knowledge. And then it hits them, oh crap, we're still going to have the test, he's calling it a celebration of knowledge, And so then I'll hit them again, I'll say, and some of you are going to be celebrating longer than others, right? And so they don't really think that's a funny joke. I do, and I tell it every semester. And I tell them, some of these jokes are just for me. That's okay, I'm having fun. So anyway, but I do this all the time. I'm always teasing them, having fun. Another thing I do is I use self-deprecating humor. I try to make fun of myself, and I use embarrassing stories, show I'm a regular guy. I try to be relatable, because some people, they get intimidated by the instructor, the teacher. Oh, this is an important person, but I don't want them to see me that way. I'm just a regular Joe. I just love teaching, and that's why I'm there. And so, you know, for example, I'm a lawyer, and I hesitate to even tell my students that because they get this bad image of lawyers. Oh, he's a jerk, he's pretentious, you know, and I'm like, no, I'm just a regular Joe. I'm nothing special. I just love teaching. So I'll tell this one story, and I'll share with you today. It's kind of silly, but this is a true story. When my daughter was 1 year old, my wife and I lived in New Orleans, and we signed her up for a jamboree class. I don't know if anybody knows what a jamboree class is, but it's for toddlers. They play music and you dance, you know, help the kids move to the music. So I signed up for that. I rushed home from my day job, grabbed my wife and my daughter, and I threw on an old pair of shorts and a t-shirt. We get there right at the nick of time when it starts. When we get there, I have to sit Indian style with your legs out on the floor, each parent holding their child, and the instructor is right in the middle. So we're in a big circle. It's me and 15 or 20 moms. And I got my daughter in my lap. She's 1 year old. And the instructor's there, and they start the class, and everybody is staring at me. I mean, just noticeably staring at me. I'm like, what is going on? This is weird. You know, like, I don't know, this is not normal. This is not normal. All the ladies are kind of like checking me out. I'm like, whoa, I guess I still got it, you know? So I was just eating this up. You know, we're moving to the music, and I'm having fun. And they just keep looking at me, and I'm like, hey, you know, this is funny, but my wife is sitting right there. Hello. It's very awkward, very awkward. So 20 minutes go by, and this doesn't change. I don't know what to do. I'm just smiling back. Finally, we take a break. I go sit on the side bench. My wife comes up to me. She whispers, I really like your underwear. I said, what are you talking about? And I looked down. There was this giant hole in the center of my britches. I couldn't believe it. They weren't thinking I was hot. They were thinking, what kind of sick pervert goes to a toddler class with a hole in his britches? So anyway, I tell that story to my students. They think that's hilarious, and they eat it up every time. So anyway, now I tell all that to tell you this. Not everyone has that outgoing personality that they love telling jokes. It's just my personality. So if it doesn't work for you, do you. Don't worry about doing me. If you don't feel comfortable telling a lot of jokes and funny stories, maybe you can just get some movie clips off the YouTube, right? You know, whatever your favorite. You got a question?
You prefer the questions now or later at the end?
Oh, you have questions now? Sure.
Well, for me, I am a woman and I cannot use some kind of humor.
Okay.
Because I am rejected. And I have had very bad experiences with the students, especially with masculine students, male students. And there are boundaries that you cannot go over. You have, on contrary, the reaction is immediate and you feel that. So for women, it is very hard to cross that, we say in Spanish, in linguistics, to break the emotional barrier.
Oh, I see.
Okay? And then you have to treat every student individually, because every person is different. To learn the language, you need 40 days for beginners, and you have 40 days to break that barrier.
Oh, wow, okay.
But that is for you to know that it depends on the skill or the material that you are teaching. You have to behave very carefully with that. It is not conceptual, or that they need to be engaging in speaking Spanish. So,
right.
So it is going. You cannot make a funny joke for you. I can use it and I love it with other level Spanish, upper levels, but with beginners, Spanish 1 and Spanish 2.
Can't really do that. Well, in my experience, a lot of times I get this question even at TCCT, I got this question is, hey, I don't feel comfortable telling certain jokes because somebody's going to be offended. There's always somebody that their sense of humor is different than yours. And so my reaction to that is, you have to gauge what you feel comfortable sharing with your students. But what I do at the beginning of every semester, I tell them this, I'm going to be over the top. I'm going to say stupid things, silly things, because look, we have a 3-hour night class, and it's contract law, and I have to keep you awake somehow. So I tell them up front, I'm going to say silly things, over-the-top things, and let them know. And the purpose is to make this a fun, enjoyable time. I could just be straight-laced and never tell a joke and go through the material, but it's going to be torture. It's going to suck, right? I just tell them that. So I try to do this for the whole intent to make you guys smile and laugh, and that's why I'm doing this. So I'm not trying to offend anybody, and usually that goes over well, and they understand my purpose.
You do great. That is good. I am doing the same, but we have other.
Oh, gotcha. No, you got to do what works for you. So
snacks and food work.
What does?
Snacks and food.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
That always works.
That always works. That's a great tip.
Oh yeah.
So my next tip under entertainer is where's Amy had her costume. So you saw at the beginning the picture of me wearing this was actually last Halloween. So this is on Tuesday night, and I gave my 3-hour night class, business law. And so what I did was I taught my regular close, which was that, and then at the break, we take a 10-minute break midway through the class. I didn't tell anybody anything, just walked into the restroom, came back out, and that's me wearing the zoot suit. And one of my dual credit students, a high schooler, he didn't know what that was. He's like, "What are you supposed to be?" He had no idea. He thought I was a clown or something. But yeah, I look ridiculous. But the whole idea was just to bring a little fun, a little levity to the classroom. And so that's what I did. Everyone was smiling and having a good time.
You have the attention of them in the night. It is very difficult to teach in the night.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So that's one idea. Now another, I'll tell you, I'm not the first. There's lots of people that do this. They wear a hat or a silly costume. My favorite is my professor of English teacher in high school, Mr. Scott, and he used to teach us English, and we went over the Canterbury Tales. And he would wear this ridiculous hat. It was pointed, had these big horns, like a medieval hat. Beowulf, I call it a Beowulf hat, but it was ridiculous. He would wear that, and he had a lyre. I think it's called a lyre. It's like a guitar, and he was strumming. He didn't know how to play it. It was just for effect. And so he would read the Canterbury Tales in this ridiculous get-up that he would wear. And it got everyone's attention, man. You want to know what he's going to say next. So that was just an example that I had growing up that I loved. Another more practical tip is you can have an ugly Christmas sweater contest in December, just to bring a little levity, a little fun into the classroom, and give them a little extra points or something. The next one is use crazy, over-the-top, silly examples, and I do that all the time. And so let me give you an example. So in business law, we have to cover comparative versus contributory negligence, which is a defense, one way to get out of negligence if someone sues you, or at least it limits your liability, how much you owe. And you have to take into consideration, the judge does, how much negligence comes from the plaintiff, the one suing, and how much negligence is in the case of the defendant, the one being sued. So you look at both parties and figure out. So I could use a very simple, up-to-date example. It would be nothing wrong with it. I could say, Daphne is driving negligent. She's driving while texting on the phone. She's not paying attention. She runs into my truck in the parking lot. Bam! So now we have a negligent act, and you could walk through the rules on comparative versus contributory negligence. Again, nothing wrong with that, nothing at all. But what I find is, if I use an outrageous, ridiculous example, my students are more likely to remember this come test time. So I will have this ridiculous story, and I'll make this stuff up on the fly, and I'll say, Kevin, what is your favorite, give me a manly dog, some cool dog that you would love to own, a big, burly, manly dog. And before Kevin can answer, I'll say, what's that? A toy poodle. Okay, great, right. So Kevin has this toy poodle. He's going to take it for a walk. Now give me a manly, a cool name, a really intimidating name for your awesome toy poodle. And before Kevin can answer, I'll say, what's that, Fifi? Okay, great. And so Kevin, picture this, Kevin is walking his dog, Fifi, across Highway 242 at night, at midnight. It's dark, there's no moon out, it's super dark. You're wearing dark clothes, your dog is dark colored, and it's hard to see. So this is kind of a negligent thing. You kind of see where this is going. So you're crossing the road, not at a crosswalk. It's dark, and it's on a major highway, a big highway at least. And then I'll pick someone else. I'll say, Il Hobby, I say, right? Let's say that you're driving a really cool car, and I ask you, give me any car that you would love to own.
Camry.
A what?
Camry.
Camry. Okay, Camry's a nice car, but think big, think awesome, like a Porsche or a Ferrari or a Rolls Royce.
BMW.
Something you would love to own.
My son loves Ferrari and
Okay. All right. Let's go with Ferrari. That's a great. So let's say that you're driving a Ferrari, all right, and I'm trying to think of a negligent situation. So I don't know. You're driving 110 miles an hour at midnight on 242. You kind of see where this is going, and you've got a dead prostitute in the trunk, and you're snorting an 8-ball of Coke. Okay, so this is a ridiculous scenario, and you're thinking, oh my God, what did Mr. Kowis just say, right? And so I paint this horrible picture, and Il Hobby is driving the car super fast, and you're watching a video, your favorite YouTube video, you're not paying attention, and you run over poor Fifi, okay? So Fifi is dead, and you
I'm still alive?
You're still alive. Thank goodness, Kevin is still alive. So you sue Il Hobby for negligence, and then we walk through the rules on comparative versus contributory negligence. Now again, I could use the texting example with Daphne, right? That's it, right? And that would work fine. There's nothing wrong with that example, but my students are going to remember this outrageous story more likely come test time.
Okay, how many times I have to do that in 2 hours? If I have class for 2 hours, how many times I have to do it like this funny things?
I do it all the time, but that's me. That you got to find what works for you. You know, I would mix it up and try some and because you've got so much material to cover, so you have to realize that you can't add a bunch of jokes and you still cover all the same material. You've got to work it in where you can. So I constantly do it because I'm teaching contract law, remember, I'm trying to keep them awake, so I joke around with them a lot. But it's not like every five,
No, you have
it's
to
not like
lecture.
every minute.
Sometimes you have to lecture.
You got to lecture too, exactly. Yeah, that's a good question. But here's a big tip: is use their actual names in the class. So if Kevin's in my class, I'm going to use Kevin in my story, my analogy, and I use it. And Kevin's going to be awake; he's going to hear his name. Oh, okay, he's talking about me, right? And then hobby, same thing. So if I use my students and I use them in my analogies, in my questions, they're going to stay awake and be engaged and pay attention. The next one is sing and dance. Now, I'm just going to start and just tell you, I am not a good singer. I am a horrible, horrible singer, but that's okay. So what I do is, we talk about Statute of Frauds, which is a concept in business law. Certain contracts have to be in writing to be enforceable, okay? And if they're not enforceable, you cannot, if they're not in writing, you can't enforce them in court. So I'll ask them, and the old textbook was great. It listed all 5 types of contracts that have to be in writing under the Statute of Fraud. The new textbook that I use, not so great. It doesn't have all the categories. One of them is a marriage contract, a prenup, a prenuptial agreement. And so as a hint, I will sometimes do this. I will sing the first 5 or 6 lines of Gold Digger, and it's a horrible rendition, okay? And when I say horrible, like, think William Hung from, was it American Idol? She bangs, right? He was horrible, but it was entertaining because everybody, remember that performance. So that's how horrible it is. And one time I did this, and when I finished singing those first 5 lines, somebody asked me, "Can you repeat that? I want to record it and put it on YouTube." I was like, "No, thank you. I suffered enough, humiliation as it is." So anyway, but the idea is when I sing that, somebody in class every semester invariably they know that song, that famous Kanye West song, Jamie Foxx song, and they'll remember somewhere in the line it says, "We want prenup, we want prenup," and so that will help them remember that's one of the types of contracts under Statute of Fraud. And so that's just one example. Sometimes I'll break into dance, and I'll do this because I'll often call on my students and I'll say, "Carmen, can you tell me the answer?" And if you don't know it, I'll say, "That's fine, can you look it up in the book?" And so while she's fumbling through the pages because she may not have read it all, this is one way to get them to open the book, I'll say, "Hey, does anybody else know what page she should look on?" So they'll tell her, and she's looking at the page and she's reading as fast as she can. Well, I've got 10, 15, 20 seconds of dead air there, and that's boring, and it's a night class, and it's contract law. So what do? I break into a silly dance, whatever the latest song craze, the dance craze is. If I played music, I would pick up a guitar and strum it, if I had that. That's just an idea. Just something to entertain them and keep them awake and alert at all times. The next one is perform skits. And so what I do in business law, we have to do case briefs. So you read a case and you have to sort of summarize the facts, and you have to know enough about the law to identify the legal issues. And you write all this out, and I do it on the board with the help of my students. And so when I do that, it's fine, it works fine, and I do this often during the semester. But what I find to really get their attention is I get my students up out of their seat and we act out the case. So I'll actually have students that play the role of Miss Paulsgraf, and then the train guard, and then I'll have someone stand there who's the train, and he'll slowly start to walk away. And I'll have all the different players from the actual case, and I'll play out the scenario. It takes like 3 minutes tops. It's very quick, very easy. And then that way the students can physically see what is happening in this case. It helps them envision and understand the case better. And I only do it on the first case because I don't have time to do all the cases in the course. But I do that, and it does help them. Anything to get them out of their seat, though. That's the key thing about performing skits, is it makes them get up out of their seat, and it gives them a little bit of a little activity, a little bit of alertness. So I love doing that. If you don't want to do, what I just said, you could act out a scene from a book if you're studying a particular story or literature. You could act out a viral video that's relevant to your class. So these are just ideas. Okay, so we're done with the entertainment role, and now we're changing gears, talking about coaching. How can you be a good coach? And so what I come up with, this is again another one of my anonymous student evaluation tips, comments from my class from a couple of years back. I know that I'm usually exhausted by the time I get to class, but it perks me right up and I get excited about learning. So again, you're trying to motivate your students. You're trying to get them to understand and feel motivated and engaged. So let's go through these. These are, again, some top 5 tips for me on how to be a really good coach. First is correct distracting students. use real world examples, and then these last three are sort of life skills that apply more than just at my class level, it's like in real life. So you want them to be good communicators, you want to ask them to speak with confidence, ask them to think big. So now we go through each one. I'm not going to go through all my policies on how to correct distracting behavior. Everyone has their own style and how you do that. But the key thing about whatever your policy is, make sure it's in your syllabus, right? Because if there's ever a conflict and then someone complains, luckily, knock on wood, it hadn't happened to me. Nobody's complained yet in all these years. But if it ever does, I want to make darn sure my syllabus covers it. If it says there's no cell phone use and someone, I get on in for cell phone use in class, I want to be able to point to that if there's a complaint and say, hey, that person's already been warned, it's in the syllabus. So that'd be something I would mention up front. Now the next tip is use real world examples. And so anytime we're talking about, any topic in business law, like the OJ case, that's a perfect case because it deals with how one situation can land a person in both criminal trial and civil trial. We talk about that. And it's a very relevant case. And the funny thing is, since 2001, when I started teaching, that case has remained relevant. I think there was a TV series or a movie or something last year about it. So even my younger students, they still know the OJ case, right? So that always impresses me. Now, other things like terrorism, if you're going to use the nightclub shooting in Orlando, the Boston Marathon, event. So all these are relevant and they're recent. When I first started teaching, I had the Oklahoma City bombing as my example with the Timothy McVeigh, and remember that? So that was like a late 90s situation. I started teaching in 2001. People knew that one. It was fresh and it just happened up the road here in Oklahoma. But after about 5 or 10 years, I realized my young students didn't know that. They didn't know. Maybe they studied it, maybe they didn't. So you have to keep it fresh and updated. Whatever your real world examples are, keep it current. Next thing is demand communication. So I tell them up front, I expect you to treat my class like it's a job. So if you know you're going to be out, I expect you to communicate. And this is a good skill because any future boss is going to demand you to have good communication skills. Any relationship, your spouse, your kids, anybody, that's a critical life skill that everyone should have. So I expect them to treat this like a job and give me notice to the extent that they are aware of they're going to be out or whatever, so we can make arrangements. The next thing I ask is that my students speak with confidence. So I always put them on the spot and I say, if they answer a question in class and it sounds like there's a question mark at the end, like they're not really sure, I'll say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Can you repeat that with confidence? And I tell them, I say, pretend like you're the attorney representing someone who's on the stand for a death sentence, death penalty case. So your client could die if you don't win this case for them, right? So think of it that way. So I want you to look me in the eye when you talk and just tell it with complete confidence. Even if you don't believe yourself 100%, just say, the answer is yes, Mr. Kowis. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear confidence in your voice. And then who knows, you might fool me. You might persuade me. I may be a little like, not paying attention. Okay, obviously that's the right answer. They're very sure. So it's a good skill. It's a life skill, and I expect them to speak with confidence every time they answer me. The next thing is I ask students to think big. So Ilhabi, when he said, what was it, a Camry? Nothing wrong with a Camry, but I want my students to think I like to plant that little seed that one day you could own a Ferrari, or maybe your son has that thought. That's awesome. So I try to instill on that confidence, that think about, because I grew up in a small town, Dayton, Texas, about an hour from here. Nothing wrong with living in a small town. I loved it. My parents are still there. It's a great community. But it's nice to see that, you have possibilities in you that maybe people hadn't told you before. So I ask them, I say, hey, what kind of business or, what do you see yourself doing in the future? If I'm going to use that as an example in my class, I don't want to hear that they're the manager at the local McDonald's. I want to hear you're the owner of the chain of like 20 McDonald's in the whole Houston area or something like that. So I always try to get them to think big when I talk to them. And if you expect big things from them, maybe they'll expect big things from themselves too. So this is moving on to the parent role. This is an actual student quote. He takes a personal interest in teaching the material, ensures students actually learn the material and cares about and helps students discover concepts on their own. So again, the whole idea is to make them not feel like a number. Like you're there to help each individual student and you want to see them succeed in your classroom. So now these are my top 5 tips on how to be a good parent in the classroom for this role. Memorize students' names, which is a biggie. That's a big one in my class. Ask students' hobbies. Try to relate to them, see what they're interested in outside the classroom. Include students' names in lectures and examples. We've already talked about that a little. contact absent students, and then praise students you're reading. So we'll go through each one. This is another quote from fall of 17, so this just happened. Thank you for remembering our names so quickly and for making the class so much fun. So my students really pick up on the fact that I take the time to learn their name. And the way I do it is I use an icebreaker game where I get to learn a little something about each person. We'll talk more about icebreaker games in a minute. But if I can know a little bit something about each person and some unique quality about them, like Daphne has 10 cats or whatever it is, and I'm going to think, oh, crazy cat lady, you know? I mean, I don't say that out loud, but that's what I'm thinking. It helps me memorize Daphne's name. I don't even know, do you have any cats? No, okay, so she's not the crazy cat lady. But anyway, it's really important. I do that on day one, try to memorize their names. So when I do this and I use their names learning on day one, I spend about an hour doing this game. It sounds like a waste of time, but it's not. Because if I know every person's name and they know I know their names, then they're going to more likely stay awake because they know I can call on them at any moment, right? I know El Javi's name, and so I'm going to call on you. And so you're more likely to pay attention during the class. And so going forward, every single week I have a 3-hour class, so I have plenty of time to call on everybody, at least once, sometimes more. Now, this is the point at the TCCTA where I went over an exercise to help memorization, and it worked out okay. It wasn't perfect. Certainly, it was just sort of an experiment, if you will. I'll just describe what it was. We're not going to do it now because of time constraints, but essentially I had each group, or maybe 6 people, break up into a group, and they had one leader, and the leader came up with a list of 10 states, 10 U.S. states or territories, and then it didn't share it with the others yet. And once that leader had the 10 states, he got everyone's attention, and they read it one time, and one time only, and everyone had to try to think about it, not write it down. They had them wait 60 seconds and then write down as many states as they could remember. Then we checked their answers to figure out how many they got right, and then we switched gears and went to another leader in the same group. They picked another leader. So the second leader did the exact same exercise. He or she came up with their own list of 10 random states, not the same 10. But this time, they had to come up with one sentence to go that's relevant to each state they picked. So they might say, Nevada, because I went there to celebrate my 21st birthday or something like that. Hawaii, because I went there on my honeymoon. And so every state had an additional sentence, some additional information, even a small amount, but it had to be a whole sentence. And so we did that, and at the end of the exercise, they compared to see if the extra information helped them memorize the states. And about half the time, so I think in the faculty symposium, we might have like 7 groups. There's like 45 people there. And I would say about maybe 4 of the groups out of 7 said that this helped, the additional information. So it doesn't help everybody. And that was similar to the results I had at the TCCTA. I gave this speech twice there. And I would say a little over half said it helped their scores when they had additional information. So it doesn't help everybody, but it seems to help at least some people. I know it helps me. So that's why I encourage you to use an icebreaker game and learn about your students. That helps you memorize the name. The next one is ask about students' hobbies. So if you're just sitting there at the 10-minute break, why not ask, hey, Carmen, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I went skydiving. Wow, I didn't know you enjoy skydiving. So I might ask you more about that. And it turns out maybe some other students are in that. So going forward, I might use skydiving examples in my classroom just to make it relevant and interesting. So these are just ideas, and it helps build a rapport with your students, of course. And you can use those examples, skydiving, and test questions also.
Yes.
Moving on, the next one is include student names in lectures. And because again, Zig Ziglar says the sweetest sound in anyone's name is the sound of their own name, right? So I love using people's name. I'll call him Kevin, and I'll say Kevin every time I do. So he knows that I'm talking to him, and everyone can, it piques their interest. So I do that. I even use their names. I don't do this every semester, but I'll draft a test like the one I gave this week. I had like 70 questions, and I'll have at least every student's name once in the test somewhere. And so people will pick up on that, like, oh, El Javi's name in there. I wonder if my name is in there. What's Mr. Kowis going to say about me? Did I have a dead prostitute in the trunk, or what's going to happen? So it gets their interest, and I don't do that every semester because it is time consuming, but I do occasionally.
Well, it also helps your students to learn their names as you're calling them out.
It does,
they
so
get
other
learned.
students know their name. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
It's
That's a great point. I didn't even think of that.
2 birds with 1 stone.
Exactly. So the next thing is contact absent students. And Lone Star had an email, I don't know, 5-10 years ago. And I remember when I first got it, I thought, oh, this is silly. We're like hand-holding now, We got to reach out and email or call them and say, hey, where were you? I missed you. But I started, I'm a soldier, I'll follow orders, I did it. And I started to find my students really like that. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't expect that. I thought they were going to be like, hey, you're invading my privacy. So I never asked for an explanation. Right, it's none of my business. That's my attitude. If you miss class, that's on you. It's fine.
Agree.
But I want to know, what can I do to help? Is there any makeup work you can do? Are you behind in something? And, can I help you hook up with a classmate and get their notes? I won't give you my notes, but I'll let you, get a quiz, copy your quizzes from your neighbor that you missed, that sort of thing. So I just want to let them know that I'm there, and I encourage them to come to future classes, and they usually appreciate that. To the extent I can get a hold of them, because some of their numbers are no
Do you
longer
have any? Do you have any activity or any part of the course that is not that you cannot make up? The students cannot make up final exam.
Yeah.
Or
I do. I have quizzes that are daily quizzes. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I don't allow makeups. But what I do is they can make up one missed quiz by doing an optional internet activity, but only one. So if they miss 2 or 3 quizzes, 2 or 3, I give one every class. So if they miss 2 or 3 classes, they can only make up one. So it will ultimately hurt the grade. But it doesn't matter the excuse. I don't care what the excuse. They could be in the hospital, grandma has died for the 4th time, whatever. So, but that's just my policy. So this one says, praise students who read. So every class, I start it the same way. I ask for a show of hands. How many people read this first chapter? Because I usually cover 2 chapters every class. It's a 3-hour night class. And there's no grade involved, so people are honest usually. And I'll get a better gauge as to whether they're prepared, and I'm going to get a lot of questions if they read. Or if nobody read that week, then I'm probably not going to get many questions, or the ones I get are not going to be very sophisticated, right? So I do this, and then I praise the ones who read, and it's kind of fun. Sometimes I'll notice this side of the room, a lot more people read than this side. So I'll challenge this, hey, they're making you look bad. Maybe you guys can try to outdo them next week. So I'll try to play off of that and encourage them to read, and I tell them how important it is come test time. The next thing is, okay, so we're done with parent, and we're moving on. I think we're doing pretty well on time. Yeah, so the next one is law professor. So this is the quote to start to kick this off. And it says he uses the Socratic method, which prepares individuals for careers in business, or if they are furthering their education in field of law. So this was one of my quotes. So yes, I do use the Socratic method, what I call Socratic light, which I've already explained. And basically you just ask questions to probe their understanding. And so they have the assigned reading, and they're supposed to know the 4 elements of negligence, for example, which is duty of care, breach of duty, causation, and damages. So they should already know that, and we'll go over it at the beginning of class so they have it fresh on their mind, or if in case they haven't read yet. And then I'll give them a situation that's negligent, like what I talked about earlier, where Fifi got ran over, and I'll ask them, what is the answer? How do you play out, is this negligence, is it not negligence? And then I'll walk through that example, and they have to use critical thinking skills and logic to come to the right conclusion. And whatever their answer is, ask them, how did you come up with that conclusion? Walk me through the steps. Apply the elements of negligence, for example, and tell me, do you have each and every step, why or why not? And so that helps them understand and learn better, rather than me just lecturing. So benefits, helps with critical thinking skills, requires students to better understand the materials, helps instructor gauge students understanding the material. So that's another piece of it. One time I had a semester where a person sat in the back, and there was a gentleman, a young man, very nice guy, and he sent me an email right after the first class. He said, Mr. Kowis, I love your class. It's a lot of fun, but hey, can you do me a favor? Can you not call on me? I'm just kind of shy. He didn't have a medical reason or anything like that. He just didn't enjoy speaking in front of his peers. And I said, I'm so sorry, but I can't promise you that I won't call on you. In fact, I will call on you because this helps me gauge your understanding. I want to make sure that you understand the concepts. And if I don't have the ability to call on you, I won't know. I have no way. Plus, I use a Socratic method. So I said, if this is not your style of teaching, maybe you take a online class or something like that. And sadly, the student went away. But it's probably for the best because if that's wasn't his style of learning, then that's fine. But I'm going to call on my students. That's what I do. And most students don't complain. That's just a one time that happened all these years. What else can I? Okay, so let's kind of walk through one of the examples already. I talked about the 4 elements of negligence, and I give them a scenario. So the scenario might be, Carmen, you're driving a car at 100 miles an hour on I-45 here at night. Right? Crazy, negligent thing to do, you would think, right? So you're driving it to impress your friend, okay, Daphne's in the car with you. Hey, watch this. And you turn off the lights. So it's midnight, there's no moon, there's no lights, it's out in the country, driving 100 miles an hour in your car, and just to, freak everyone out and have fun, right? And so after about 30 seconds and you're laughing and having a good time, you turn the lights back on. There's no accidents, no tickets, nobody gets harmed, no emotional, no physical damages whatsoever. And I'll say, is that negligence? And then you'll say yes or no. Now, at first blush, some people say, yeah, that's negligent.
Yeah.
But what's happening is, if you know the 4 elements, you're missing one of the elements, which is damages, right? And so ultimately I'll ask them if they whatever their answer is, yes or no, it is negligence, or no, it's not. I'll say, well, why or why not? And then hopefully they'll go through each element, and then they'll realize, oh, we don't have damages, so no, it's not technically negligence. It may be a reckless thing to do, but legally it's not negligence. So that's just an example. Another example is, I'll ask, we'll do a criminal assault battery situation. So I'll say, Elhabi has an umbrella, and he's picking it up, and he accidentally hits somebody else in the classroom, Carmen. And then, is that assault, criminal assault and battery? And then I'll ask, and sometimes I'll get, some students that think it is, and some that don't. And then I'll have like a little debate. But really what I'm doing, not to see their debating skills, but I want them to figure out on their own, hey, we've got to go through the elements. And what's missing? What's missing in this case is you don't have the criminal guilty mind. You have to have a guilty state of mind for every crime. You have to intend, you have to have intent, criminal intent. There is no criminal intent if you accidentally hit somebody with an umbrella, right? So.
But there are damages.
Yes, but that's not enough for criminal. Civil, for civil
criminal,
you can.
Civil case.
Right, but I'm talking about criminal.
You make a distinction.
Right, I make that distinction, exactly. So anyway, that's the idea. You get the students to play off of each other and walk through the steps. That's using the Socratic method. They call it Socratic dialogue. So that's just another example of how you can do it. And now moving on to the last role, which is classroom teacher. And so this is an actual quote from one of my student evaluations. Mr. Kowis engages each and every student through the entire semester. Let's see. So these are my tips, my 5 tips that I have. Classroom teacher. I start each and every semester with an icebreaker game. Like I said, the one I use, and we'll get to it in a minute. I'll save it for a second. I do give candy bribes. Not ashamed to say that. I give easy quiz at the end of every class, and then use peer grading, and then advise students to pre-read and attend all classes. So we'll walk through each one. I like to use, and there's a lot of good icebreaker games. I like to use the one that I call 2 truths and 1 lie. It's popular. A lot of people use it. Has everybody in this room used that? Have you heard of that? Okay, so have you heard of it?
No.
No? So what you do is each person in the classroom has to come up with 3 statements about themselves. The more outrageous, the better. But 2 have to be true and 1 has to be a lie. And it has to be in that way, and it can be in any order, but it has to be 2 true statements and 1 lie in any order. And then we try to guess, the rest of the class guesses, what is that person lying about? So this is the one I used at the beginning of this semester. So I said, Mike Kowis does these 3 things. My hobby is off-road racing. So I race ATVs, UTVs off-road. That's what I do as a hobby. My second statement about me was I've appeared in a viral video that had 425,000 views. Okay? And then my last one is I'm a 2-time U.S. Olympian in men's archery. And that was in 2000, 2004. I didn't win any golds, but I did compete in those 2 Olympics. So those are my 3 statements. Again, 2 of these statements are true, 1 is a lie, okay, and you have to guess the lie. So just by round of hands, you were there, right, so you know what it is. But by round of hands, how many people think I'm lying about number 1? Right, Kevin thinks I'm a liar there. No, how many people think I'm lying about number 2? Carmen, okay, and then I'm assuming, how many people think I'm lying about 3? Elhabi, I didn't see you vote. I saw you vote.
Okay, number 3.
You think 3? Okay, so most of you, okay. So it turns out, this is number 1 is true. I do race, and that empty seat there, my son usually rides with me. So we actually race off-road. Usually my son's with me, but so this is like a year ago. I haven't raced this weekend, but I do love off-road racing. That's true. Number 2, I don't know if we can get this to play on your video. Let's see. How do we do that? Oh, I don't know if it's going to work. Sometimes it does. There it is. Yeah. So this is me dabbing. Is that what the young people say? I'm dabbing at a Rockets game with my daughter and my son about a year ago. My daughter typed in, "This is not a safe place anymore." I don't know, she's silly. So she didn't tell me she was recording it. That's just me clowning around my kids, and And so we're leaving the game. We had a great game. Rockets won by like 30 points. It was a blowout. And then as we're leaving, my daughter says, "You're going to be mad." I sort of recorded you being silly, and I was like, "What? Okay, no big deal." Well, I sort of uploaded it to the Rockets Instagram page. I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" Well, yeah, they were asking for recordings of people in the audience. Okay, big deal. I'm sure nobody saw it. Well, actually, it says here that there's already been 50,000 views. Not just mine, but others that they grouped together. And so by Monday morning, it was 425,000 views. So it was crazy.
Wow.
So anyway, so yeah, that was a surprise. Obviously the lie is about the I'm not an Olympian, never have been. I wish I could say that, but no. So this is just a fun game, and again, the more outrageous the answers I get from the group, the better. And sometimes you learn really interesting things. I had a young African American guy, and he said his statement was, one of his statements was he was a minister in a church. And I thought, okay, he's an upstanding looking guy, he speaks intelligently. I believed him. Okay, he's probably a minister. And then come to find out that was the lie. And I was like, what? I was mortified. I said, I can't believe you lied about being a minister. I said, I'm pretty sure the Bible says, you're going to go to hell for that. You can't lie about being a minister. So we all had a good laugh, I had one, a husband and a wife took my class at the same time, which is very curious. That only happened once as far as I know. And when they took the class, we were doing the icebreaker game, and the guy said the most ridiculous thing. One of his statements was he was an actor in an adult film. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. And I didn't know if it would be more embarrassed for him or his wife, because it's obviously not true. He didn't have sort of the physique that you would imagine. It was just like, oh my God, dude, what are you doing? That's crazy. So anyway, but I learned funny things. I learned people have 10 cats sometimes, or I learned that people have lived in 40 countries or whatever. So it helps me. I think, okay, Javi is a world traveler, because I learned that he's lived in 12 countries. I'm making this up, but that helps me memorize each person's name. Kevin?
Mike, what is your class size?
Usually 32 max. I get a lot of full ones. Right now it's like 20, 25, 22.
Okay, so it's the
Yeah.
normal cat.
Yeah, normal cat.
24 to 35, so a lot of students. Okay.
Yeah. Now, if I had 100 people, or if I was at a major university and I had 400, like my daughter's at Texas State, I couldn't do all these things.
No.
So some of these you'd have to have like a seating chart. You'd have to do something else to get their names. So yeah, I do have that benefit of a relatively small class size. But the fun thing is, I didn't mention this, not to brag, but my students love this. So when I go down the row and we do the icebreaker game, I don't tell them I'm going to do this, but afterwards I'll go down the row and I'll tell every person their name. And they're blown away every semester. And they're like, oh my God, this guy's got photographic memory. I said, no, I don't. But we just spent an hour and I heard all these crazy stories, and now I know, the lying guy about the minister, the guy's going to hell, right? I know his name. So anyway, we have a lot of fun. But that helps me know their name, and then every class I'm going to call them their name. Give candy bribes. I don't do this every class, but I do it every course. So at the end of the course, the week before the final, which is cumulative in my class, I know everything for the semester, I give out candy. And the way I do it is, we have a 3-hour night class, and we just do a review session for the final. So I'm reviewing everything we learned the whole semester, and I bring a lot of review questions with me, and I bring a big bag of candy. I bring all kinds of different really good candy, all kinds of chocolate and other things. And so what I do is I ask everyone questions. And if you get it right, I give you your choice, whatever kind of candy you have. I usually have a lot to choose from. And then I'll throw them a piece of candy. If they get it wrong, no candy for you, right? Like the soup Nazi on Seinfeld. So we do that. It's a lot of fun. But I ask them so many questions, everyone gets their fill. We're all diabetic by the time we leave there, right? So it's a fun class. I love that class. One thing, I got the idea from my instructor, Stephen F. Austin, when I was in school many, many moons ago. Dr. Tim Clipson, he just retired last year. I love that guy. He did this when I was a student there. He did candy, and he only brought 2 kinds of candy when we did the review session. He gave Hershey's Kisses to the girls, and for the guys, Hershey Kisses with nuts. So I was like, well, that's pretty clever. I don't think I want to go there today. You may get in a little trouble. But anyway, it's kind of funny. So anyway, so I do like doing the candy bribes. Let's see. You could do it pizza, donuts. I've done that too. But it's hard to throw the pizza, right? Sling it through the air. Causes problems. Let's see. Next one. Uh-oh. We're going to do the clicker here. Did I hit the button?
Is that?
Oh, it might have died. Daphne, can you... Do I have to hit one of these buttons off and on, or no?
While we're waiting, dance.
No, oh, hey, okay. There you go. I can do it manually, right, while you're doing that?
Yeah.
So, we go to the right. Oh, here we go. So give daily quizzes And so I do this as a reward. So I try to encourage my students to come to class. And what I do is, whether they read or not, I intend for them to get an easy A on the quiz that I give at the end of class. Why do you think I give it at the very end of class? Yeah, because at the 3-hour night class, they tend to sneak off at the break. So every semester I've taught, I give a quiz at the end of every class, always the last 10 minutes. And I tell them, if you're too busy, so is it working? Thank you. Oh, okay. Got it.
Some people do it at the beginning for
Yes,
the
to get them there on
attendance, so
time.
you're not
Right.
tardy.
Yes,
You
and
miss
I
the
leave my
quiz.
door open. I don't care if they come late, because I'm thinking some people work in Houston, right? And I'm not going to penalize them. They got caught in a traffic jam. So that's just my own philosophy. Everyone's got their own philosophy. I leave my door open so it's not distracting when they come and go. But I always give out an easy quiz. Now I tell them, even if you don't read, you're going to have an easy A. How do I do that? Because I say these magic words during class. Hint, hint, wink, wink. So if there's a quiz question, I'm going to say, hey, take good notes because you might see this in 30 minutes or an hour, whenever the quiz is. Hint, hint, wink, wink, and get out your pencil, start taking notes. And they usually do make A's and B's, even if they didn't read. Now I tell them, you can't do that on the test. If you don't read, you're not going to do well, and that's typically true. And I'll get to that in a minute. How do I know that? But anyway, that's my philosophy. I do give daily quizzes, and usually they like it because now they have a summary of 10 or 12 questions that they can take home and study for the test, and they like that. Peer grading. So this, I love this. So as an adjunct, I don't want to spend a lot of time grading my daily quizzes. That's a big time suck. So what do? I rely on this case, OWASO. So basically, Supreme Court acknowledged that peer grading is a form of education, a form of instruction. And so when you grade your neighbor's paper, you're thinking about the questions again, and you're thinking about the answers and why they are. It's just a second chance to think about the questions and to learn the material. So I do peer grading, and then after they grade them in class, right, so we do the quiz, I have them hand the paper to their neighbor, they all grade it, and then they hand it back. And then I ask for their grades, and I tell them, look, if you just want to come up here and show me the grade, or on your way out the door as I call your name, or you can whisper it to me, that's fine, or you can yell it out loud, I don't care. But they have to be comfortable, and if they don't want to share their grade, I mean, they have a right to their privacy. I don't want to encourage them to say, and some of them, a lot of them yell out their grade, they just don't care. But some of them are private, and that's totally fine. Just come and show it to me, and I'll just write it down as they leave. And that works out great for everybody. I've never had a complaint.
Do you start applying this since the very beginning when they do not know each other? Or
Yes, very first
after
class.
a few weeks?
Very
3
first
weeks?
class. And they get used to it. It's never been a problem. Again, I'll take the grade individually so nobody will know it. But yeah, I do it the very first night of class. I give a quiz the very first class. So we do it the very
And
first
that's
night.
not in violation of FERPA?
Nope, it's not. As far as I know, this is good law. I've researched it. And
I'm
so
sure
yeah.
but that's...
I know, but I don't do this for tests. Now, tests, there's more likely that you might give, hey, your neighbor's going to give you a better grade.
Daily quizzes.
Yeah, quizzes don't have a lot of,
No,
each quiz is not worth a lot. So if you had one time where a buddy helped you out, and hopefully they don't do that, but, it's not going to make or break them. So I grade all the tests, of course, but daily quizzes, I let them do peer grading, and it works out good in my class. All right, the next one is please praise students who read and attend. So here's what I do. When I give and I see them getting low on time, but in a nutshell, I pick the top 5 students. It doesn't matter what their grades are. They're usually A's, but it could be B's or whatever. And I have them stand up. And when we go over the test in the next class, I call out the top 5 students, have them stand up, and I ask these 2 questions. I don't know the answer, but I've done this every semester for over 30 semesters. And time again, I get the same or consistently similar answers. So I say, of the top 5, and it could be top 7, whatever, nothing magic about top 5. Did you come to every single class leading up to this test? From the last test to this one, did you come to every one? And my top 5 students, 90% of the time, they raise their hand, yes, I came to every class. And then I'll say, did you normally, as a habit, maybe not every time, but normally, did you pre-read the assigned chapters before you get to class? And usually 80 to 85% raise their hand on that. And I do that in front of the whole class because I want them to see those are 2 common denominators of my top students. And then maybe the wheels will turn. Hey, if I'm not coming to class or I'm not reading, maybe I can do that next time and see if it improves their grade. So that's an important concept. And that's really all I have. I feel like Oprah up here. You get a car, you get a car, you get. So I have enough free audio books for everyone. So what I'll have you do is on there, my email address is there. If you'll send me your email, send me an email to either that address or even my Lone Star account, doesn't matter. I'll send you an email back with instructions how to download your free copy of my book, Engaging College Students. and it's totally free. It just takes you to audible.com, and it gives you, you'll put it in the checkout, and I'll give you a free promo code. You'll punch that in, and it'll go from $15 to $0, and then you order, and you can download it to your smartphone or laptop and listen to it at your leisure. It's like a 3.5-hour book. So anyway, that's my free gift to you. Thank you for coming. Other than that, that's all I got, unless you got questions.
Awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Whew. We barely made it.
You
in time.
are in
You
time.
did it.
Hey, Mike, I'm curious. I'm sure you've heard the CAC
What's that?
curriculum across campus.
Oh, yes, yes.
Have